Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the slow, silent world of ancient chroniclers in the Indus Valley. The kiln fires are flickering low, the evening breeze smells faintly of clay and cattle, and everything's just a bit too dusty to feel modern. You're squatting in the middle of a settlement that technically hasn't been on the map for 4,000 years. Around you, homes are neatly lined in grids, paved with mud bricks, and every single rooftop seems to have a cow on it. The air hums with the gentle thud of pottery being stacked, and somewhere to your left a sleepy donkey sneezes. You probably won't survive this civilization collapse, by the way. Sorry. Climate change, tectonic shifts, river relocations. It's not looking good for the town long term, but for now, let's pretend none of that's happening. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet crunch gently across packed earth streets. You pass by granaries, wells and houses, all strangely similar in shape. Boxy, functional, anonymous. Nobody here carves their name on a mailbox. There are no mailboxes. In fact, almost nothing here has an individual mark on it. That's where you come in. Someone, likely a low-ranking official or a very persuasive uncle, has dragged you into the world of seal making. They push a lump of clay into your hand and point toward a squat open-air workshop. There, they grunt. Chop chop. The workshop's roof is thatched with river reeds. It smells like wet dust and charred goat hair. A line of half-broken stools circles a low table, covered in tiny slabs of soapstone, also called steatite. Each slab is no bigger than a baby tooth, and beside each one is a tool, a sharp stylus, sometimes bone, sometimes bronze, shaped perfectly for doodling eternal hieroglyphic confusion. A grizzled sealmaker waves you over. His back is hunched like an old cat, and his fingers are stained with a mix of ochre, soot, and clay dust. He hands you a new stylus, bone, lightweight, smoothed by decades of nervous chewing, and gestures toward a rough chunk of steatite. Go on, he mutters. Make history. You have no idea what you're doing, that's okay. Neither do the historians. Because here's the thing, Indus seals are tiny, cryptic, and wildly consistent. They often show the same handful of animals: buffaloes, elephants, rhinoceroses, and the infamous horned unicorn. They're always carved in miniature, and always paired with symbols that no one successfully translated. Is it a writing system? Is it iconography? Emojis? Historians still argue whether these carvings were used phonetically, symbolically, or ceremonially. For all we know, you could be carving a seal that says, "Return to sender." As you awkwardly scratch a line into the stone, your teacher sighs and takes it from you. He smooths it over with his thumb and starts again, slicing thin grooves into the surface with machine-like precision. You watch, hypnotized, as a graceful buffalo takes shape with only a few confident flicks. Don't think of it like drawing, he says without looking at you. Think of it like whispering into stone. There's a quiet reverence to his movements. He pauses before each line. He studies the angle of the light. He adjusts the seal in his palm with the care of a jeweler. It's part art, part meditation, and part serious neck pain. Outside the workshop, a child yells something about a lizard. A woman nearby is sweeping dust out of her house, with the enthusiastic futility of someone who knows it'll be back tomorrow. Somewhere beyond the well, the town's water collector is already shouting about a broken bucket. Again. You, however, are being initiated into a discipline of miniature permanence. It's not glamorous. Your back aches. Your hand cramps. The stylus is poking your palm. And yet, there's a kind of quiet power in the act. In a world with no paper, no books, and no Netflix, carving stone is one way to make your thoughts last longer than your lunch. And your lunch? Probably some barley flatbread with lentils and a side of fermented fish paste. It's an acquired taste. You're introduced to other apprentices. One of them has already carved 3 seals today and is smugly polishing them with a bit of leather. Another tried to engrave a monkey riding a bull and was told to take the day off. The atmosphere is more casual than you'd expect from a civilization often described as urban and sophisticated. Turns out, even in the Bronze Age, artisans grumble, joke, and sneak snacks behind the boss's back. The tools here are simple, but effective. A chisel, a file, a stylus, And yes, that's literally it. The real magic is in the hands and the patience. You scratch and polish, carve and correct. Your first buffalo looks more like a confused pig. The teacher shrugs. It's got charm, he says, then tosses it into the reject pile. Outside, the sun starts to dip behind the rooftops. Long shadows stretch across the courtyard, and fires are lit under large clay kilns. The seals you just carved won't be fired tonight, but they will soon, and once they are, they'll be hard as ceramic and ready to stamp onto whatever clay packet or trade good comes next. Before you head out for the evening, someone hands you a small jar of water and a handful of beetle leaves. You chew slowly, watching the flicker of kiln flames while listening to a far-off flute. Around you, people laugh, barter, and argue over goats, but in the seal maker's corner, everything stays quiet. Tomorrow you'll carve another buffalo, or maybe a rhinoceros, or maybe something no one has carved before. Maybe it'll confuse archaeologists for centuries. Either way, welcome to the world of tiny permanence. You trudge back into the workshop just after sunrise. The sky painted in soft apricot, and the smell of dung fires still clinging to the streets. Somewhere, someone is pounding millet. Somewhere else, a baby is already crying. And in your little corner of the Indus Valley, the seal-making workshop is slowly waking up with the same slow, cranky rhythm as always. Inside, the air is still cool and a little smoky. A pot of something vaguely bean-like simmers over a clay stove in the corner, making the whole space smell like last night's dinner reheated with resignation. You find your place at the workbench. A low platform scattered with stone blanks, worn styluses, and a thick film of dust that never, ever leaves. No one really talks at first. You get a nod from the senior chronicler, the guy who carved a giraffe-looking bull yesterday and insisted it was an early artistic interpretation. Another apprentice mumbles something that sounds like a greeting but might have been a yawn. A small goat is asleep in the corner on someone's tool bag. He doesn't work here, but he won't leave. That's life. This is where the quiet work begins, carving the record of a civilization that nobody will fully understand for 4,000 years. Not that you're thinking about that. You're mostly thinking about not ruining your thumbnail while holding the stone in place. These workshops aren't fancy. No marble floors or golden tools, just packed mud, low ceilings, and a faint buzz of flies trying to die quietly. Yet they're also the backbone of Indus bureaucracy. Think of it like a sleepy DMV, but with better aesthetics and fewer forms. The men and women here are essentially administrators, with artistic flair. Their job? To stamp certainty onto uncertainty. To give each sack of grain, each batch of fish sauce, each clay tablet of trade agreements a little square of authority. You start your work for the day, squinting over a fresh steatite blank. It's cool in your palm, slightly chalky, not unlike soap. That's where the term soapstone comes from, obviously. The ancient chroniclers liked it because it was soft enough to carve when first cut, but it hardened when fired, perfect for seals. Though of course, historians still debate whether the seals were mostly decorative, administrative, or deeply ritualistic, or maybe all three, maybe none. Welcome to Ancient Studies. Your instructor wanders over and inspects your carving. It's a tiger, sort of. He raises an eyebrow. It looks surprised, he mutters. Well, you say, maybe it is surprised. Maybe it just found out it's extinct in this region. He blinks at you, then walks away. You're beginning to love this place. Tools line the far wall, bronze chisels for cutting details, flint points for tracing outlines, and bits of curved shell that someone swears work better than anything else for smoothing. No one has the same favourite. One chronicler refuses to use metal altogether, muttering something about the soul of the seal reacting badly to copper. Another swears by bone tools carved from goat ribs. The goat currently napping on the tool bag may or may not be aware of this. There's a certain rhythm here, a scratch, a pause, a breath. The repeated motion of cutting lines into stone becomes a kind of meditation. You zone out. The world fades. It's just you, your fingers, and a buffalo that looks increasingly like a confused sofa. Occasionally, a merchant stops by to pick up a finished seal. They're always in a hurry, always sweaty, always making jokes about how they could carve on themselves if they had the time, which they absolutely couldn't. You know it. They know it. The goat knows it. One woman, clearly irregular, leans in and taps a half-carved seal on your board. That one for the salt shipment? You glance at your instructor. He shrugs. If it looks salty, sure. She laughs and leaves with 3 polished seals wrapped in palm leaves, off to mark bundles headed for a city that may or may not still exist in your time. Mid-morning, someone knocks over a water jar. The floor is soaked. Your neighbour grumbles and lifts their tools onto a dry patch. The goat moves exactly 0 inches. You're handed a blank steatite cube and told it's a priority commission. That means it needs to be perfect, no pressure. The design? A standing rhinoceros, left-facing, with 4 glyphs overhead that resemble a ladder, a stick figure doing yoga, a sideways fish, and what might be an upturned comb. You hesitate before carving. What do these glyphs mean? Ownership, commodity, blessing, curse? Historians still argue whether the symbols were syllabic, pictographic, or meant to be read at all. The spacing is baffling. Some are grouped in lines, others hover like afterthoughts. There's no Rosetta Stone for this language. You might be carving High Priest or Good Luck or this side up. You carve anyway. The rhinoceros emerges slowly from the blank. You remember the trick. Long, shallow cuts for the back, deeper cuts for the horn, gentle beveling around the feet. You catch yourself smiling. It's actually relaxing. There's something profoundly comforting about a job this repetitive. The world around you may be bustling, markets roaring, carts rolling, someone trying to sell dubious fermented grain out of a clay jug. But in here, the seal makers move like clockwork, quiet, steady, slow. A fringe fact you pick up from an elder. Some seals weren't made to stamp anything at all. They were buried under doorways, tucked into clothing, or worn like amulets. Personal protection, clan ID, secret superstitions. The elder just shrugs. Sometimes a seal's for sealing, sometimes it's just nice. You finish the rhinoceros. It's left-facing, majestic, slightly squinty. You buff it gently with a scrap of smooth leather, and for a moment the stone gleams. You kind of love it. Outside, the sun is high. The dust has kicked up. Lunch smells are drifting from the kilns. More lentils, more onions, maybe a hint of mustard seed. You've got seal dust on your hands, sore shoulders, and a stylus poking out of your belt like a tiny sword. And you think, as the goat finally sighs and rolls over, that this might be your favourite kind of boredom. The workshop is warm now, sunlight pooling in through gaps in the thatch above and glinting off the scattered stone tools like soft golden syrup. Outside, kids shriek as they chase chickens through the alleys. Inside, the world is quieter, calmer, except for the loud chewing of someone working through a very tough root vegetable. You're sitting cross-legged again, your back already sore, facing the seal master's demonstration table. He holds up a seal no bigger than a peach pit. At first glance, it looks like a series of random scratches, maybe the aftermath of a bored toddler with a nail. But as he tilts it toward the light, the image comes alive. A stylized lion mid-pounce, tail curled like a question mark, its jaws caught in a silent roar. You lean in. The detail is absurd. Each tooth is a slash smaller than a sesame seed. The lion's eyes are little ink blots of mystery. That's not art, the master says. That's a contract. You blink. A contract with who? He shrugs. Whoever needed to know you meant business. Turns out these tiny seals were the bureaucratic backbone of Indus Valley life. Each one told a story, whether it was about ownership, transaction, lineage, or a long-running buffalo feud. Merchants used them to stamp clay tags, which were then tied to bundles of goods, textile rolls, grain jars, baskets of dried fish. These clay tags would harden in the sun, essentially becoming the shipping labels of the Bronze Age. One seal might show a humped bull, a tree, and a strange symbol that looks suspiciously like a fish doing a cartwheel. That could mean merchant of the sacred fig tree or these lentils are cursed. No one knows. And yes, historians still argue whether the animals on seals represented actual owners, cities, gods, or just an early form of branding. And branding was a big deal. Imagine a trader travelling across the plains, stopping at distant outposts. A familiar seal mark meant trust. It said, "This came from someone who doesn't water down the date syrup." In a world with no Yelp reviews, your reputation was stamped quite literally into clay. The chroniclers were trusted artisans. Their job was to immortalise that reputation. Every line mattered. One wobble in a horn and your buffalo looked drunk. One accidental dot and your rhino might be mistaken for a weird pig. Not ideal when you're trying to signal prestigious exporter instead of local joke. The master hands you a seal from a small chest lined with palm fibres. This one is different. There are 2 rows of glyphs, not one. Above them, a procession of animals: tiger, gazelle, elephant, fish. It's almost poetic. He taps the top right corner. That, he says, means the seal belonged to a priest. You study the carving. The figures feel alive. The way the fish's tail curls up at the edge like it's waving goodbye. The gazelle's legs frozen mid-bound. So, you ask, was this like a signature? He grins. More like a resume. Many scholars believe some seals acted as formal credentials, portable proof of rank, permission, or trade specialization, sort of like carrying a badge but carved into stone and without the awkward lanyard. Some of the more elite chroniclers even carved micro-scenes. You once saw a seal that featured a man standing between 2 horned animals under a pipal tree. Was he offering something? Praying? Yelling at the cows? No one knows. That's part of the charm and the frustration. Quirky fact of the day. There are over 4,000 known Indus seals, and not a single one includes a human face in detail. Lots of animals, plenty of symbols, but human expressions. Nada. Whether that's about cultural beliefs, taboos, or just a really shy civilization, historians haven't agreed. As the day drifts along, your carving improves. You finish a seal showing a water buffalo surrounded by 4 glyphs, a zigzag, a star, a comb, and what looks suspiciously like a squashed hedgehog. The master nods. Good, he says, mystifying. You polish it using fine sand, then a scrap of linen dipped in oil. The result is surprisingly elegant. The buffalo almost glistens. You hold it up and feel a small spark of pride. You've made something that could travel across rivers, deserts, and centuries, possibly without anyone ever fully understanding it. Lunch arrives in the form of a clay dish stacked with something crunchy and vaguely chickpea adjacent. You sit in the corner, chewing while eavesdropping on 2 chroniclers, arguing about how many legs a lion should have in profile. One insists on 3 for symmetry, the other says 4 for realism. A third leans in and says, why not 5? Show a dominance. These are the debates that shape civilizations. The afternoon light turns honey gold, pooling across the floor as the kiln fires begin to smoulder. Outside, the market stalls are shutting. You hear the clatter of wheelbarrows and the call of a street performer who swears his monkey can predict rainfall. The monkey, to its credit, looks extremely unimpressed. Inside, the workshop glows with warm light and settled dust. The chest of finished seals is half full. You slide your latest creation inside, nestled between a horned zebra, someone's creative liberty, and a round seal with nothing but spirals. Does that one even say anything, you ask, pointing at the spirals? The master shrugs. Maybe it's just pretty. And that's the final mystery. Not every seal has to mean something practical. Some may have been decorative, symbolic, or purely personal. A private whisper from one's soul to the universe frozen in stone. You stretch your legs, sore from sitting. The goat finally gets up, stares at the fire for a solid minute, then walks outside like he's seen the truth. You're not sure what he knows, but you're mildly jealous. The workshop is quiet again. Tools are being cleaned. Seals are being wrapped. Tomorrow you'll start a new batch. A new lion, a new set of glyphs, another perfectly confusing animal. For now, you brush dust from your tunic and step out into the fading day. Another story, another symbol, another mystery etched into silence. You return to your spot in the workshop after a short walk through the winding lanes. The scent of roasting barley trailing behind you. A street performer was yelling something about snake teeth and marriage luck, but you managed to duck into the alley just before he roped you into a demonstration involving a blindfold and an unhappy cobra. Back in your seat, a fresh slab of clay and a bone stylus await. This time, you're told to focus on the pictographs, the enigmatic symbols that march across seals like an ancient alphabet no one really speaks anymore. You sigh, roll your shoulders, and start gently etching into the moist, pliable surface. You begin with a simple line, then a hooked shape that looks like a fishing rod, then a box with 3 dots. It's hard to say what it all means. Could be 50 goats, 1 owner. Could be delivered Tuesday, or maybe angry priest, handle with care. The problem is, the Indus script is still unreadable. It's a non-translated writing system. No bilingual Rosetta Stone, no lucky tablets with pictures and words helpfully aligned. Just thousands of tiny symbols on seals, pottery and tablets. Some recurring, others rare. Some elegant, others resembling accidental scratches made by a chicken with performance anxiety. As you try to copy a set of symbols provided by the master, you notice a pattern. The same 3 glyphs keep appearing on different seals, but in different orders. A man beside you notices too. "That one means chief merchant," he whispers confidently. "Or," says another, leaning in, "it's a curse." They argue for a while. You keep carving. The truth is, scholars still debate whether the Indus symbols were a full language or a proto-script. Maybe they were shorthand, maybe they were religious. Maybe each was more like a logo, something people recognized without needing to read in the modern sense. A fish could mean fish, or wealth, or a deity, or a family name, or Tuesday. This ambiguity doesn't bother you as much as it used to. There's something comforting in letting meaning stay foggy. You've started carving like you're writing dreams, short, strange, and strangely satisfying. Today's assigned seal is steatite, as usual, but less chalky than yesterday's. That means it's been left to dry slightly before carving, which helps the stylus grip the surface better. You settle into a rhythm. Carve, breathe, brush, carve again. Your glyphs emerge in a neat row. A ladder shape, a fish, something that could be a candle or a very skinny man with no arms. The elder chronicler glances at it. "Nice flow," he nods. "You could do priest work with that hand." You suppress a smile. Priest work in this context means copying ritual inscriptions, often the most complex and closely guarded designs. You're still far from that level. But hey, he didn't say it sarcastically. Around midday, the kiln fires are stoked again. The room fills with that warm mineral scent you now associate with comfort and singed eyebrows. A batch of dried seals from yesterday is arranged on tiles and slid into the mouth of the kiln. Each piece is marked with a symbol to distinguish it from the others. Not a name, but a glyph. These people didn't sign things, they symboled them. Some fringe theories suggest that these recurring symbols might have been personal identifiers, like a seal being your ID, password and email signature all in one. Some even say they were passed down in families, kind of like an heirloom watermark. One particularly whimsical chronicler insists he once saw the same 4-glyph combination appear on 3 different seals across 2 cities. "A clan of fish merchants," he whispers dramatically. You nod. Or, "It was just a popular design," he gasps. "How dare you?" Your instructor rolls his eyes. "Don't start." You start polishing a new seal. This one shows a reclining bull and a vertical string of 5 pictographs. A bird, 2 triangles, a loop, and what might be a cucumber. Your guess. Large animal, travel far, leave snacks. You're not the only one making jokes. Humour, you've realised, is the one thing that seems eternal. Someone passes around a seal with a goat standing on a wheel, and everyone laughs like it's the latest meme. "Why did the goat ride the wheel?" one apprentice asks. "Because he couldn't find the cart," another replies. Silence. "Don't quit your seal job," someone mutters. But humour has a role here. It breaks the monotony. These artisans sit for hours, repeating lines, copying patterns, perfecting loops and curves until their hands ache and their eyes blur. A well-timed joke keeps things sane. As the day winds down, you're given one last task. Inscribe a seal with a set of pre-selected glyphs used only by travelling merchants. You've never seen this pattern before. It's a bird, a zigzag, a pair of downward slashes, and a glyph shaped like an open hand. You copy it carefully, not knowing what it means. Could be grain approved, could be don't steal this sack, could be blessed by river priest, no refunds. That's the thing. You're carving something meant to be understood at a glance by people who never need to speak to each other. Imagine a marketplace where everyone has different languages, but the seals speak for them. Stamp a tag with your seal and it says, "This is mine, this is approved, this is sacred." Or maybe just, "Please don't drop this jar again." You finish your carving, you sand it down, brush away the dust, oil the surface, and give it a final polish. Then you place it gently in the drying basket. Someone will fire it tomorrow. Someone might use it next week. Someone might dig it up in 4,000 years and argue about what your fish meant. The kiln crackles. Outside, the light softens to apricot again, the day folding itself back to quiet. You stretch your back, wipe your hands, and glance one last time at the strange glyphs you've etched into stone. Maybe they'll endure. Maybe they'll be erased by time, dust, and lost rivers. But for now, they're yours. The morning air feels heavier today, tinged with moisture and the faint coppery scent of old fires. Somewhere someone's pounding grain rhythmically against a stone slab. It's your unofficial village wake-up call. You make your way to the workshop, already hearing the soft scratching of styluses against steertite, the occasional sigh, and the goat wheezing in its sleep like a tiny four-legged bellows. Today's lesson isn't about what you carve, it's about how you hold the stylus. You think that sounds like busy work until the instructor drops a half-finished seal into your palm and says, "Fix it." You look. It's a disaster. The lines are crooked, the curves wobbly, a bull's legs look like breadsticks. The whole seal's tilted as if whoever carved it sneezed halfway through and just kept going. Your instructor raises an eyebrow. Bad hand posture. You groan internally. This is going to be one of those days. You're taught to cradle the stylus differently today, not like a pencil, but more like holding a tiny knife and a secret. Thumb on top, 2 fingers beneath, pinky bracing the edge of the seal like a shock absorber. At first it feels awkward, then you get it. Like turning a key or playing a flute, it clicks into place with muscle memory you didn't know you had. You don't carve with a hand, your instructor says. You carve through it. That's very poetic, possibly nonsense. But it helps. You begin again, the stylus gliding with more confidence. Your lines straighten, your loops tighten. You try a basic glyph set, zigzag, star, triangle, curl. The strokes are cleaner. You're still slow, but there's less hesitation in your hand now. Like the stone is meeting you halfway. Then comes your first animal of the day, the unicorn. Ah yes, the Indus Valley's most mysterious mascot. A horse-like beast with one long spiraled horn, always drawn in profile, always facing left, sometimes with a plant or ritual stand in front of it, like it's waiting for someone to bring snacks. You hesitate. Was this a real animal? Your instructor doesn't answer right away. Instead, he shrugs. Was the flying bird with 3 heads real? You frown. That's not... He grins. Exactly. Historians still argue whether the Indus unicorn is mythological, symbolic, or just a bad drawing of a bull seen from the wrong angle. Some say it represents divinity, others think it was a trade symbol. One fringe theory suggests it was a brand logo for a long-forgotten cereal. Now with extra lentils. You start carving carefully, outlining the curved neck, the horn, the flat hooves. It's easier than you thought. The unicorn is all curves and clean shapes, no fur texture or complicated shading. Just form, balance, and suggestion. You add the ritual stand, basically a triangle with legs and maybe a tree on top. Some believe this represents an altar or fire stand. Others argue it's a trough or feeding bin. Still others insist it's an incense burner or something altogether symbolic. Honestly, it could be a fancy cake tray. The finished seal looks kind of charming. The unicorn appears calm, curious, faintly judgy. You feel like it's staring into your soul, probably questioning your lunch choices. You hold it up for inspection. Your instructor nods. That unicorn could sell 100 jars of mustard oil. High praise. Someone nearby carves a seal with an elephant motif. Another's working on a tiger. Each animal has its own cultural weight, its own shape language. Buffaloes are strong, wide, curved. Tigers are sharp, crouched, feral. Elephants, big, lumbering ovals with expressive little eyes. But the unicorn? The unicorn is pure Indus. No known civilization before or after adopted it the same way. It's become the riddle at the centre of the Indus seal mystery. You glance around the workshop. At least 5 other unicorn seals are in progress, some more stylized than others. One has spirals carved into the horn. Another's horn is suspiciously short. One poor apprentice made the neck too long. It now resembles a horse that gave up halfway through being a giraffe. The workshop fills with mild laughter. Someone names the new giraffe horse Priesty. It sticks. As the sun climbs, the temperature rises. The clay beneath your feet dries into thin cracks. A trader pokes his head in and announces he's headed to Lothal with a batch of indigo-dyed fabric. He wants 3 new seals. Fast. The instructor sighs and hands out blanks. The rush orders are simple, just 2 glyphs and a unicorn on each. You and 2 others divide the task like overworked interns trying to meet a mythical deadline. You carve your unicorn faster this time. Less fuss, less fear. The stylus feels natural now. You flick the last line into place and give it a gentle polish. Not bad. The trader snatches them up, pays in dried dates and a wink and vanishes in a cloud of dust. You suspect he'll eat the dates before he even hits the river. With the rush job done, you're rewarded with a cup of tamarind water and 5 minutes of blissful nothingness. You sit, legs stretched out, eyes closed, listening to the crackle of the kiln and the occasional bleat of that goat. You don't even question his continued presence anymore. He's probably unionized. Later, you help prepare a new batch of steer-type blanks, chipping raw stone, soaking it in water, and leaving it to dry just enough for tomorrow's carvings. The pieces are laid out like rows of tiny tombstones, each one waiting for its story. As the day winds down, someone passes you a seal to inspect, an especially smooth unicorn with a subtle spiral horn and 4 crisp glyphs overhead. You pause. It looks perfect, timeless. You ask who carved it. No one knows. It just appeared. You hold it a moment longer, letting the mystery settle in your palm. A silent unicorn from a forgotten artist, whispering something across centuries. Then you set it gently in the finished tray. The next morning you're up before the goats. That's how serious today is. You're heading to the marketplace, the heart, lungs and very loud mouth of Indus Valley life. The sealmaster insists it's time you understand the purpose of your carvings, outside the calm bubble of the workshop. You've made them, he says, handing you a pouch of finished seals. Now watch what happens when they meet the world. The air outside hums with anticipation. The streets are already busy, carts creaking, children chasing each other with sticks shaped like fish, and the occasional merchant loudly advertising what sounds like slightly mouldy barley as fresh from the gods. The market itself is a grid of stalls and open plots, canopied with fabric in shades of ochre, umber, and the occasional faded indigo. Everything smells intensely alive. Smoke, curry leaves, pressed sesame oil, and mud that never really dries. You follow a merchant named Revti, who greets you like you're her backup goat handler. She's selling lentils, dyed cloth, and 3 sealed jars of pickled mango that look deeply suspicious. She shows you how each sealed jar has a stamped clay tag stuck to it, a little oval disc dried hard in the sun, bearing one of your unicorns and 3 glyphs. This one, she says, tapping the unicorn's horn, means I made this. These glyphs, salted, blessed, no refunds. You nod slowly. What if someone tries to fake it? She grins and pulls out another tag, clearly a forgery. The unicorn has 2 horns. The glyphs are all wobbly. It looks like someone tried to carve it while being chased by a wild goose. This guy, she says, sells across the river, tries to copy my seal, but you can tell. It's all in the leg curve. Apparently, counterfeit seals were a thing even back then. Traders tried to replicate successful glyph combos to benefit from another's good reputation. Some did it well, others, well, the 2-horned unicorn speaks for itself. Quirky fact, there's archaeological evidence of broken seals deliberately snapped and discarded. One theory is they were retired after being copied or compromised. Like, whoops, someone forged my fish and tree combo. Guess I need a new symbol now. Historians still argue whether these broken seals were symbolic acts, security measures, or simply a case of oops, dropped it again. But the idea of sealing as a form of trust and identity remains central. As you move through the market, you notice seals being used in all sorts of ways. One trader presses a seal into fresh clay to tag a roll of dyed fabric. Another stamps bundles of barley with a glyph of mountain and 3 birds. A man dealing in copper tools wears his seal around his neck, tied with twine, tucked like an amulet under his tunic. Good luck charm, he says, or maybe a receipt, I forget. A child runs by, arms full of kindling, with a tiny seal bouncing on a cord at his waist. He's too young to carve, but not too young to belong, and that's when it clicks. These seals aren't just admin tools, they're personal. They're extensions of trust, community, and legacy. Each one, however tiny, carries the weight of a reputation. They're tiny, portable stories, compressed identities that cross language barriers and riverbanks alike. You stop at a stall where a woman is weighing bundles of ginger. Her assistant stamps each packet with a small seal before tying it shut. You lean in. It's not one of yours. It's better. The carving is precise. Clean loops, elegant balance, a glyph that almost looks musical. You're kind of jealous. You ask her who carved it. She points to a man hunched behind a cart, chewing on sugarcane and swatting flies like he's on a very slow mission. My brother, bit of a perfectionist. You squint. He's also using a curved stylus, bone-tipped with copper. Interesting. You make a mental note. Then something else catches your eye. A trader at the edge of the square using a seal shaped differently, circular instead of square. He stamps it into a fresh clay tablet attached to a crate of dried fish, then brushes sand over it to set the impression. You edge closer. Why the round seal? He shrugs. Easier on jars. Apparently form follows function even in the Bronze Age. Square for bundles, round for jars. Some seals even have handles carved into the back. Ergonomics. Long before anyone had a desk chair. The market is getting louder now. Someone's yelling about spoiled dates. A dog is barking at absolutely nothing. Two women are arguing whether a shipment of turmeric was stored too close to fermented onions. You retreat to a quieter corner, where a younger merchant is setting up a small stall for travel goods. Hemp rope, clay flasks, water skins. He shows you how he presses his seal onto strips of clay that are then wrapped around rolled cloth, dried in the sun and cracked open only upon delivery. He points at one seal and says, "That one went to Harappa last month, came back cracked." You raise an eyebrow. Cracked by accident? Or someone peeked inside? He shrugs. It's a chilling thought. Seals as ancient tamper evidence. The line between art, record-keeping and security gets blurrier the longer you watch. You sit beside the edge of the market now, hands dusty, the pouch of seals on your lap feeling strangely heavy. They aren't just tokens, they're passports, promises, memories carved into stone. A gust of wind sends some sand skipping across the ground. A child laughs. Somewhere, a flute plays lazily off-key. You finger one of your unicorn seals. The carving is rough compared to the others you've seen today, but it's yours. A tiny echo of your effort and patience and goat dodging. As the market begins to wind down, traders packing up and shouting last offers, you realise something surprising. You kind of want to carve another one. You return to the workshop just as the sky begins its shift from pale blue to the soft amber of late afternoon. There's a new pile of steatite chunks on the main table, freshly quarried and still damp with river mist. A young apprentice is trying to split one with a chisel and a rock, and from the looks of it, he's not winning. You settle in, still thinking about the market, the forged seals, and the weirdly musical glyph from the ginger trader's stall. But today, you've been assigned a new lesson, learning how the stone gets treated before you ever touch it with a stylus. Steatite is soft when freshly quarried, soft enough to scratch with your fingernail, but not quite soft enough to sneeze through. It's why the Indus chroniclers loved it. Pliable at first, then nearly ceramic after heat treatment. What you're handed now is called green stone, unfired, raw and smooth. Your instructor tosses a chunk into the coals. You blink. Aren't we supposed to carve it first? He grins. That's the old way. Sometimes we harden first, for practice. You stare into the fire. The chunk slowly shifts colour, from pale grey to a deep, moody green. Then, like magic, it changes texture. More glassy, more brittle, like hardened soap. This is your canvas now. Historians still argue whether the Indus people fired their steatite before or after carving. Some seals appear to have been fully incised while soft, then baked. Others seem to have been fired first, then engraved, maybe to give them more durability, or maybe just because someone was tired of accidentally snapping their masterpiece during polishing. You're handed the newly fired piece with a warning, it'll chip, don't cry. The stone is now tougher. Not impossible to carve, but definitely less forgiving. Your stylus skids at first, then catches. You make your first cut. It feels satisfying, like slicing into firm wax with a warm knife. You begin carving a basic motif, a square glyph and a standing bull. Then, crack. You flinch. A tiny shard pops off the side. You stare at it like you just dropped a sacred relic. Your instructor leans over. Perfect, he says. Now you know what not to do. Turns out, carving post-firing is like doing surgery with a toothpick, but some chroniclers preferred it. Fired stone made sharper lines, cleaner edges and, if done well, a seal that could last centuries under harsh use. You're not there yet, but you're beginning to understand the balance, how deep to cut, how to guide the stylus without pressure, how to let the stone decide the tempo. You're assigned to help a journeyman chronicler prepare a batch of fired blanks. He explains the trick. Fire low and slow. If the stone overheats too quickly, it cracks. If it's fired unevenly, the inside stays too soft, like baking a loaf of very judgmental bread. You help arrange the stones in a makeshift kiln, a pit lined with brick fueled by charcoal and carefully vented. The chronicler adjusts the pile with the precision of someone who's watched too many seals explode under stress. Another quirk? Steatite darkens when fired. What starts out pale and bland ends up dark green or even grey-black. It's how you can sometimes spot fakes. Modern replicas often forget the firing step and look suspiciously pastel. While the kiln heats, you return to polishing a seal that cracked earlier in the day. The crack isn't fatal, just a thin vein across one corner. You sand it down using fine river grit and a piece of smooth leather wrapped around your fingertip. As you work, the image on the seal comes into focus, a tiger crouched and alert with 3 glyphs overhead. You add one last swirl and the whole thing clicks. The tiger's gaze, the spacing of the glyphs, the depth of each line, it suddenly looks intentional. You realise that imperfection is part of the charm. Even cracked seals tell stories. A side note, some scholars think the seal makers reused broken or failed seals as amulets, game pieces, or even kids' toys. One archaeologist once claimed to have found a seal fragment embedded in the plaster of a house wall, possibly for good luck, or maybe just excellent recycling. You ask your instructor if the cracked seal you just finished is still usable. He nods. If it still stamps, it still speaks. Later in the afternoon, the kiln fires die down. The batch of blanks is left to cool slowly overnight, covered with a thick cloth to avoid sudden temperature shocks. You peek at one still glowing softly in the ash, rounded edges, a gleaming dark sheen begging to be etched. Someone offers a bite of roasted lentil flatbread and dried onion, your version of dessert. You eat on the doorstep, watching the sun set behind the outline of the granary, its silhouette jagged against the orange sky. As you chew, the goat finally returns from wherever he's been all day. He inspects the kiln, sniffs your stylus, and flops down dramatically. Tomorrow, you'll get to carve on fired stone again. Tonight, you dream of styluses that never break, seals that never crack, and lines that curve perfectly, even on the hardest stone. And maybe, just maybe, a unicorn that doesn't judge your posture. By now, the workshop feels like an extension of your own body. You know which stool doesn't wobble. You know which stylus has a slight bend that makes it perfect for curving bullhorns. You even know that if you show up before sunrise, someone will absolutely hand you a breakfast dumpling you didn't ask for. You eat it anyway. Mystery filling builds character. Today you're stationed near the kilns, the fiery belly of the entire seal-making operation. It's not glamorous, it's hot, it's loud, and someone always burns their sleeve. But here's where your fragile steatite engravings are transformed into permanent records, hard enough to outlast rain, time, and probably several regime changes. The kilns are simple, but effective. Shallow clay pits surrounded by brick stoked with dry cow dung and chopped wood. You're told to help manage airflow. Too little, and the seals come out underbaked. Too much, and you risk seal stew, which is exactly as tragic as it sounds. You shuffle closer to the firing rack where several seals from yesterday now rest, waiting to go in. They've been drying all night. No moisture means less risk of internal cracking during the bake. You recognise one of yours, the unicorn with the extra pronounced hooves. You whisper, "Good luck," like you're sending a baby goat off to battle. Beside you, an older kiln worker smears something odd onto the outside of a clay jar. Crushed curry leaves mixed with water and a dash of ash. Why, you ask? He shrugs. Keeps the smoke demons out. You consider questioning that, but decide instead to copy him. You start smearing your own little seal with a similar coating. Worst case, it smells nice. The kilns are lit slowly. Smoke billows out, earthy and pungent, carrying that warm tang of cooking clay and something vaguely herbal. It gets into your hair, your nostrils, your soul. It's not unpleasant, just unavoidable. As the heat intensifies, the colour of the flames changes, from dull orange to a rich blue-white flicker. You can't stare too long, or your eyes start to water. That's why the workers use their sense of smell. You'll know when it's too hot, one says, because it'll smell like panic. The seals are arranged on trays and lowered into the central dome, stacked between flat clay plates to distribute heat evenly. You watch as your unicorn disappears into the glow, and for a moment you feel like you've just sent a very important postcard into the sun. While the seals bake, you have a rare break. You're handed a bowl of sour milk and roasted rice grains. Not exactly thrilling, but it's warm and oddly satisfying. You sit near the open door watching the street dogs attempt their daily standoff with the chicken sellers. The chickens always win. An older chronicler leans beside you and starts rambling about seal superstition. "Some people," he whispers, "bake a chicken feather into the kiln." You raise an eyebrow. "For divine favour?" "No," he says, dead serious. "For crispier edges?" You decide not to ask. When the seals are finally removed, they've transformed. What was once chalky and pale is now darker, tougher and glassy smooth. Some come out perfect, every line preserved, every glyph sharp. Others have warped slightly or show tiny fractures. One literally split in half. You wince. "That one mine?" "No," says the inspector. "That one was Priesty." Poor Priesty. Forever a giraffe in a unicorn's world. Yours miraculously survives. The hooves are intact. The horn has a slight glisten where the polish held. The glyphs, ladder, curl, triangle, are crisp enough to read from a few feet away, assuming anyone could actually read them. You polish it lightly with oil and cloth. The transformation is almost spiritual. The seal now feels like it matters, like it carries weight, literal and metaphorical. You could stamp this into wet clay 100 times and it would still hold up. It could cross a desert, be buried in a collapsed granary, get tossed into a river, and 4,000 years later, someone might find it and whisper, "What is that?" A mainstream historical fact. Fired steatite was often used for sealing trade goods headed across long distances, possibly even into Mesopotamia. Indus Valley artifacts have been found far from home, suggesting an impressively complex trade network, and most of that flow of goods was made legible by little stamps like the one you're holding. After the firing session, the kiln crew cools the dome with water, sprinkled slowly to avoid thermal shock. The stone crackles softly, like the sigh of a civilization settling in for a nap. You help sort the finished seals, wrapping them in reed fibres for delivery to merchants, priests and bureaucrats. Then, you're invited to stay for the post-kiln meal. Lentil cakes and mango slices, eaten cross-legged in the flickering heat shadow of the now cooling fire. The goat's here too, chewing on a sandal. You pretend not to notice. As twilight falls, you carve one final seal for the day. This time, no animal. Just glyphs. You try something different. 4 symbols arranged in a circle, rather than a line. A spiral, a crescent, a diagonal cross, and a fish with what looks like a crown. You finish it just as the last light fades. No one tells you what it means, but you smile anyway. It stamps perfectly. Today begins with a laugh. Not yours, unfortunately. You've just handed your newest seal to the instructor, proud of your crisply carved tiger and its accompanying glyphs, only for him to squint, chuckle and ask, "Why is the tiger doing a yoga pose?" You peer at it. Okay, maybe the hind legs are too spread out, and maybe the tail curls like a question mark having an identity crisis. But still, bold interpretation, right? He pats your back. It's either divine or confused, that counts. You shrug and place it on the maybe tray. At least it's stamped cleanly. Today's task isn't about style. It's about understanding motifs, specifically the beasts of the Indus seals. You've already carved bulls, tigers, rhinos, elephants, and of course unicorns. But now you're exploring one of the weirdest characters in the whole seal menagerie, a horned, long-faced, abstract-looking creature that may or may not exist. You start with the classic left-facing profile. One horn, long ears, often standing in front of what scholars call a ritual object, but you're fairly convinced is either a barbecue or an incense stand, or a particularly aggressive snack table. This beast appears more frequently than any other on Indus seals. That's right, more than elephants, more than tigers, more than even the gloriously curly buffalo. And yet no real animal matches it exactly. The body looks bovine, the horn is unicorn-like, the head is too long, and there's no record of it in art from neighbouring civilizations. So, naturally, historians are still debating what on earth it's supposed to be. One theory says it's a mythical creature, an emblem of power or spirituality. Another suggests it's a stylized representation of a familiar animal seen through a cultural lens, like how medieval lions always look suspiciously like overconfident dogs. A fringe theory claims it might represent a long-lost breed of cattle with an unusually elongated snout. You're not sure who drew the short straw in that research project. You carve your own version slowly. The horn gets a gentle twist. the eye a slight tilt. You add a small flower-shaped object below its hooves for flair. No one stops you. No one knows what the flower means, but hey, neither do you. Beside you, one apprentice is attempting to merge the unicorn with an elephant. For the merchant who sells both kinds of meat, he jokes. You're about to tell him that's definitely not how symbolism works when your instructor mutters, "We'll call it the tri-hybrid and pretend it's sacred." Another seal on the table shows the horned creature but with multiple heads. You ask if that was an accident. "No," someone whispers, "it's to show omnipresence." You squint, or someone just sneezed and rolled with it. Either way, there it is, the central icon of Indus mystery. The unicorn or longhorned beast paired with indecipherable glyphs, staring at its little altar with eternal patience. In thousands of recovered seals, it remains the reigning star. Some archaeologists think this image might have signified a powerful merchant guild or a priestly class. Others propose it was linked to a deity, and some say it might have just meant official, as in, this bag of lentils has been certified by the Department of Mystical Hooved Animals. You test your seal on fresh clay. The impression comes out sharp, the horn gleams, the glyphs curve beautifully. You kind of like your yoga tiger better, but this one has more presence, like it knows something you don't. Your instructor inspects the stamp, grunts approvingly and mutters, "That'll make it to Harappa," which in context is high praise. Later, you help prepare a shipment for a trader travelling upriver. Each bundle of dyed cloth gets wrapped in palm leaves, tied with hemp string, and tagged with a stamped clay disc, your seal included. You press the impression one last time, feeling the texture give under your fingers, the image left behind like a signature on a breath. You wonder where the seal will end up. A warehouse? A noble's kitchen? Buried beneath a collapsed stall and rediscovered in 3,700 years by someone who mistakes it for a bottle cap? No matter. For now, it's doing its job. Back in the workshop, the instructor shows you a broken seal. Just the corner remains, but the fragment contains a sliver of the horned beast and half a glyph that looks like an angry fish. "Found in the sewer drain," he says, "still stamps." "Do we know what it meant?" He shrugs. "We know someone flushed it." The goat bleats as if in agreement. You spend the rest of the afternoon making quick impression tests. Damp clay pads set out to check clarity. One seal leaves a perfect mark, but the carving looks so sharp, so mechanical, it feels off. "Too clean," someone says. "No heart." You never thought a seal could feel soulless, but now you're staring at one and silently agreeing. So you carve another. Same beast, slightly different horn, a new glyph tucked near the back leg, a loop crossed with a dash. It's a personal touch. You press it in. This one feels right. As the sun begins to fade behind the rooftops, you finish tidying the workshop. You wash your stylus in a clay bowl of sand and ash, hang your carving cloth to dry, and tuck your final seal into the to-be-fired tray. Your hands are sore, your eyes itch, and yet you find yourself staring at your little horned creature one more time. You still don't know what it means, but it means something, and that's enough. You're up before dawn again, brushing sand from your hair and wondering if you've become part seal, part sleep-deprived archaeologist. There's no grand assignment today, no unicorns to reimagine, no ritual objects to guess the purpose of. Instead, you're accompanying a caravanner, which means, in practical terms, you're walking. A lot. You meet the caravan at the edge of town. There are 4 oxen, 2 carts, a handful of donkeys, and one guy named Saren who seems to be carrying nothing but a very heavy bag of dried beans and far too much confidence. Your job? Observe how seals travel. The first surprise hits immediately. Before departure, every bundle is sealed. Not just tied or tagged, sealed. You watch as clay is pressed into soft discs, wrapped around knots, and stamped with various seal marks. It's part inventory, part security, and part low-budget branding. You recognize one of your own impressions on a satchel of dried pomegranate peels. It's oddly satisfying to see your little tiger riding along, even if it does look mildly startled. Each trader uses a different seal. Some are square, others round. Some include only glyphs, others flaunt animals or stylized trees. You notice the same horned beast twice, but with different symbols overhead. That leads to your first of many debates with Saren, who insists the left-facing unicorn means safe for temple use, while you argue it probably means property of Vishal's cousin. Historians still argue this, you know, you mumble. Historians, Saren says, adjusting his beansack. Sounds like people who don't walk enough. You set off, the oxen trudging at their glacial, snort-heavy pace. The carts creak like they're trying to tell you ancient secrets in Morse code. The road ahead stretches into a shimmer of early heat, bordered by shrubs, dust, and the occasional sleepy goat chewing on something that absolutely isn't food. As you travel, the seals bounce gently on their strings or rest within waxed baskets. They aren't just decorations, they're functional. If a package arrives without its seal intact, it's a red flag. No need to explain. The broken clay speaks louder than any courier. The group stops at a riverside checkpoint. 2 guards with spears and the permanent squint of people who've seen every trick in the book step forward. They inspect the seals before even touching the goods. One frowns at a jagged impression that looks a little too wobbly. "Fake?" he asks. The merchant holding the bag winces. "It's real, just artistic." After some prodding and a grunted "pass," you're on your way again. It's a strangely beautiful rhythm. Trade goods marked, packed, sealed and logged without a single written contract. No ink, no scrolls, just fired clay, burned symbols, and the quiet assumption that the seal is enough. And most of the time, it is. You stop at a riverside encampment for lunch, flatbread, lentils and sweet fermented milk that you immediately regret drinking. The group sets out woven mats. Goods are rearranged. One man repacks his spices and reties the cloth, adding a fresh clay seal for good measure. You watch the whole process again, clay-shaped, soft, then pressed with a unicorn seal, still bearing grains of yesterday's barley. A fun historical tidbit. Some ancient seals have been found with grains or organic matter trapped in the impression, preserved by accident. One seal even had a rice husk embedded in the back, possibly a lazy lunch break or a very crunchy mistake. You rejoin Saren, now arguing with a rival trader about whether seals with diagonal glyphs are luckier than those with spirals. You decide not to weigh in, but it's interesting. These people believe in their seals, not just for utility, but as talismans. A properly stamped package is protected. An unsealed jar? Suspect. Even the animals seem to sense it. One ox refuses to walk until his bundle has been retied with its tag hanging visibly. By mid-afternoon, you cross a wooden bridge and reach a satellite settlement. The goods are unpacked, and traders begin exchanging bundles. The first thing they check, the seals. If the clay's intact and the impression crisp, the deal begins. If not, out come the questions. Was it dropped, opened, altered? You see a man pull out a tiny knife and chip away a seal, not to reuse it, but to retire it after delivery. Another man tosses his broken seal into a jar filled with others, a collection of used identities, do you think? You ask one merchant how many seals he's used in his life. He squints, chews his lip and replies, "About the same as meals, 1 a day, more when times are good." You consider the math. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Tiny carved moments, scattered across deserts, rivers and towns, each a footprint in clay. Later you help repair a broken crate. The jar inside is intact, but its seal is crushed. You help mould a fresh tag, press it carefully, with a bird and glyph seal you've never seen before, and place it near the top. Saren nods approvingly. "Not bad. Yours?" You smile. "Not this time." That night you return with the caravan to the outskirts of town. The goat greets you like a long-lost cousin. You offer him a bit of your leftover barley flatbread. He eats it, then tries to eat your pouch strap. As the sun dips, you hold one of your travel-tested seals up to the fading light. The clay is hardened, the impression clear. It's been on the road, touched a dozen hands, passed a river guard, and it's still whole. It survived. And for tonight, that's enough. You wake to the sound of hushed conversation and the sharp, clean chink-chink of stone against stone. It's still early. The sort of hour when dew clings to roof edges and everyone pretends they aren't fully awake yet. But you've been drafted onto seal prep duty. You shuffle into the workshop, rubbing your eyes, and are immediately handed a soft cloth, a half-dried seal and a task: polish. It's deceptively simple. You rub in small circles, using pressure just light enough to avoid cracking the seal, but firm enough to smooth its edges. The seal in your hand shows a bird with exaggerated tail feathers and 2 glyphs underneath that look like an angry ladder and a hat. You don't know what they mean, but the lines feel alive. Your fingertips trace the image slowly. Each line, each groove, each accidental wobble is part of the personality. Even the best seals aren't perfect. The good ones aren't flawless, they're balanced. Today's all about the finishing process, the small but crucial steps that turn a seal from neat rock into cultural time capsule. You're taught how to buff using fine sand, a folded bit of linen and a drop of mustard oil. The oil darkens the stone, bringing out contrast in the carvings, almost like adding eyeliner to a goddess statue. Too much, and it gets slippery, says the polishing master. Too little, and it looks tired. That about sums up your current state too. You work your way through several seals, buffaloes, fish, an elephant that looks suspiciously like a loaf of bread, each one going from dusty grey to glossy charcoal. The transformation is subtle, but powerful. Suddenly these carvings have weight, presence. And if you're thinking, this sounds like overkill for something that's mostly squished into clay and tossed aside, think again. You're shown a batch of seals intended for ceremonial use. These aren't just stamped and forgotten, they're polished to perfection, sometimes even wrapped in cloth and kept in personal boxes. Some bear signs of long use, smoothed edges, polished backs, even tiny holes drilled for stringing. Quirky detail. Some seals had holes not for cords but possibly for hanging in doorways or altars. One scholar even suggested they may have jingled when carried, like a very bureaucratic charm bracelet. You take a short break under the awning with a cup of water and half a roasted plantain. It's warm, mushy, and tastes like someone meant well. You don't complain. The goat tries to steal it anyway. After your break, you're taught how to test seals by stamping them onto freshly shaped clay tablets. The technique is precise. Firm pressure, even angle. Don't twist. You try it, and end up with a smudged unicorn and an impression of your thumbprint. Try again, your teacher says. Less hand, more horn. You adjust, exhale, and press again. This time the lines come out sharp. The horn arcs neatly, the glyphs sit evenly. You feel a weird little rush. There's something satisfying about seeing the full image appear in soft clay, like you've just revealed a secret that only the stone knew. You examine other test impressions. Some seals are clear winners, bold, tidy, authoritative. Others are, well, artistic. You see one that shows what might be a fish climbing a tree. What's this one say, you ask? Don't ask, says the polisher. That was my cousin's. Another layer of finishing is burnishing, rubbing the seal surface with a smooth stone or piece of glass to make it gleam. It's optional, but highly prized for prestige seals. You try it on a bird seal, watching the surface change from matte to faintly reflective. It's like polishing a miniature moon. One of the elders leans over and murmurs, "A good seal should look like it knows something you don't." You think about that. Because it's true, when you hold a well-finished seal, there's a sense of importance, of mystery. Even if you don't know what the glyphs mean, or why this particular horned goat is standing in front of what might be a priest's laundry basket, the craftsmanship tells you it mattered. Someone spent hours, maybe days carving it. Someone else traded for it. Someone stamped it onto something long gone. And now, you're polishing its successor. Later that day, you help prepare a set of seals for delivery. They're wrapped in fine reed mats, cushioned with cloth, then placed in a clay jar with a wax plug. You watch as the jar is carefully sealed with a small disc, this time marked with your workshop's master seal, a standing elephant with twin suns overhead. The seal is pressed into the wax, held steady, then released. A perfect stamp, the final step. You're told these particular seals are headed to a city by the coast, a port that trades in shell beads and dried fish. Your seal might end up stamped on a box that sails across the sea, or buried in a storm, or dug up centuries later and displayed in a museum beneath sterile lights, and the label, function unknown. You help clean up the workspace, oiling tools, rinsing hands in a shallow bowl filled with ash and mint leaves, brushing fragments of steatite dust into a pile. The light is fading again, and the kilns are cooling from a long day's burn. The goat has relocated to a shelf and is now refusing to come down. You take a moment to look at the sealed jar by the door. Not a single word on it. No name, no label, just a small impression, a story, a signature, a whisper etched in stone. That's the beauty of it. No explanation required. You've just settled onto your usual stool, stylus in hand, when your instructor sets something new in front of you. Not a slab of steatite, but a palm-sized clay tablet, pre-stamped with rows of glyphs. No animals, no unicorns, just symbols, over a dozen tightly packed and arranged in a rectangular block. You glance up, confused. Did someone lose a bet? He grins. Welcome to the scribe's table. Today you're moving beyond animals and seals. You're copying from something that looks eerily close to a list. And while no one can tell you what it says, there's a reverence to the process. Like you're transcribing a prayer you don't understand but still feel in your bones. You begin carving slowly. The glyphs aren't new. Fish, triangles, combs, loops. But their arrangement feels deliberate. Like they're telling a story or listing contents, or maybe composing a Bronze Age grocery list. No one really knows. That's the part that keeps this job weirdly thrilling. You pause at a symbol that looks like a ladder eating a teacup. That a thing? You ask. The instructor shrugs. Might be. This is the mystery at the heart of Indus script. It's repeated, patterned, confident, and completely unreadable. There's no known translation, no bilingual equivalent, no ancient glossary tucked under a rock, just thousands of instances of similar-looking strings carved by scribes like you, and not a single clue if they were writing words, syllables, or just elegant nonsense. Mainstream theory suggests it's a logosyllabic script, a mix of images representing ideas or sounds. Some scholars argue it's more like proto-writing, not a full language. Others think it's a proper script that just didn't leave enough behind to decode. And then there's the fringe camp. Maybe it's not a script at all, just religious symbols, or branding marks, or the world's most confusing graphic design portfolio. Your carving today is from a rare block seal, a rectangular one used not to stamp small tags but longer impressions, possibly on tablets or packaging. These were likely used by administrators or temple scribes. You work line by line, feeling out each symbol's curves and corners. It's like tracing someone else's signature centuries later, trying to guess what kind of person shaped each curl. Were they tired, distracted, rushed? Or did they sit as you do now, squinting at the clay and muttering, "What is this fish doing next to a tree?" You finish your first row, wipe the sweat from your upper lip and lean back. "That's it?" you ask. The instructor chuckles. "Now flip it and do it again." You repeat the symbols on another tablet. Practice, they say. Muscle memory. Even if the meaning's lost, the rhythm must be right. You glance over at another apprentice's block. It looks similar, but not the same. Two glyphs are reversed. One is missing a tail. Another's been exaggerated into a full spiral. You ask about it. Same message, your instructor says. Different handwriting. Turns out, even in the Indus Valley, chroniclers had personal flair. Some glyphs were carved with sharp lines, others with a soft stroke. Some liked to crowd their symbols, others spaced them like they were afraid the glyphs might fight. You study a sealed bundle brought in from another town. Its symbols are nearly identical to yours but arranged vertically. Your instructor leans in and says, "That's from Mohenjo-daro. They like things tidy." Regional variation, style, signature. Even without knowing the words, you begin to recognize the people. You take a break, letting your eyes rest. Outside, someone's yelling about missing turnips. A child runs past, holding a small clay tablet like it's a toy. You wonder if it's real or just a practice piece, a game of scribe pretend. Either way, the line between play and permanence is pretty thin here. You're handed a seal to inspect. This one's rare. A block of symbols, no animal at all, with a handle carved into the back for easy pressing. It's elegant, confident, minimal. You stamp it into clay. The result? Beautiful, balanced, totally illegible. You ask the workshop elder, "You ever think someone just made these up for fun?" He stares at the stamp. "If they did it 1,000 times across 2,000 miles. Touché. Some seals contain strings of up to 17 glyphs, always in specific directions, often with repeated patterns at the end. Some scholars believe these could be names, titles, or inventory codes. One bold theory claims the script encoded legal contracts. Another says it was just about divine blessings. One recent idea suggests it might have been mnemonic, meant to be spoken, not read. You try sounding out the glyphs in your head. Fish, triangle, tree, fish, comb, angry bird. It doesn't help, but the feeling? That stays with you. There's power in carving something even when you don't know the whole meaning. That's what scribes did. That's what chroniclers do. You're joining a lineage not of translators, but of transmitters. You hold the line, keep the form, trust that the meaning will follow. You finish your second block just as the sun begins to lower. The tablet dries beside the others, rows of mysterious, confident symbols, repeating across the table like an undeciphered lullaby. Your hands are smudged, your eyes tired, and your mind still trying to figure out if that squiggly glyph means boat or bad lunch. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it was written, that someone will see it again, that it lasts. You're halfway through your morning routine, stretching out your seal hand wrist like it's a prized athlete, when the instructor drops a sealed clay disc into your palm. It's warm, still a little soft, fresh from a bundle by the look of it. "Figure this one out," he says. You turn it over. The stamp is strange. The glyphs are sloppy, the lines uneven. The buffalo has 3 ears and no tail. You squint. Is this a joke? He grins. Or a forgery? Ah, yes. Today's lesson, fakes. Not every seal found in the Indus Valley was an honest artifact. Some were poorly copied, some reused motifs with bad execution, and some were so bad they could only have been made by someone trying to imitate the real thing without getting caught. And guess what? Forgeries weren't always condemned. Sometimes they were even expected, especially in trade hubs, where competition was fierce and close enough, often passed as good enough. You're handed a few more examples pulled from the workshop's suspect box. One seal features a horned creature with legs going in 4 different directions. Another has glyphs that double back on themselves, like someone lost track halfway through a thought and just went with it. They're not worthless, the instructor says. They tell us what people wanted others to believe. Mainstream historians agree that seal forgery probably existed in the Indus world, because where there's trade, there's temptation. Some copied successful symbols to piggyback on a rival's reputation. Others may have tried to mimic elite marks to pass as priests or officials. A few may have just been ambitious apprentices looking to skip a few steps. You carve a copy of one today, bad on purpose, for practice. The goat stares at you like it knows you're faking it. The trick is subtlety. Make the lines almost right. Let the fishtail curve just too sharply. Let one glyph seem misplaced. Not obviously wrong, but slightly off. Like a knockoff handbag with the logo just crooked enough to raise eyebrows. You press the fake into soft clay and compare it to a legitimate seal. Side by side, the difference is clear. The real one has balance, intention. The fake looks like it's apologizing for existing. Still, the fake would probably fool someone at a glance, or a distracted clerk, or a buyer halfway across the continent who just wants his grain sealed and shipped. That's what makes forgery so fascinating. It's not just deception, it's imitation, aspiration, even desperation. Quirky detail. A few ancient seals were found carved into materials that weren't steer-tight. Wood, terracotta, even soft shell. These might have been stopgaps, ceremonial fakes, or budget seals for traders who couldn't afford the real deal. One theory suggests some were made by children copying the grown-ups' work. You kind of love that. You ask the instructor if any fake seals ever became the standard. Oh, sure, he says. You make a mistake, but if enough people copy it, it becomes tradition. So, civilization by copy error? Exactly. You're sent on a short trip to the edge of town where a batch of returned goods is being examined. A trader suspects one of the seal tags is a forgery. You arrive to find a small crowd huddled around a cracked clay tag attached to a shipment of dried lentils. The seal impression is faint, but familiar. It's your style, but you didn't carve it. You lean in. The glyph spacing's off. The animal's eye is too close to the horn. It's a copy, a good one, but not yours. The trader frowns. Same workshop? You shrug. Probably, but not my hand. You catch a glimpse of the forger's error. He repeated the last glyph out of habit, a common slip for newer chroniclers. Your instructor's behind you, arms crossed, nodding silently. Well? The trader asks. Your instructor says, it's a copy, close, but not sanctioned. They debate. In the end, the tag is removed and replaced with a verified seal from the workshop. The goods are accepted. The fake, saved and sent back for training purposes. Your purposes. Back at the workshop, the forgery is set beside your real seal. You're asked to teach a group of apprentices the differences. You point out the telltale signs: heavier pressure, slight misalignment, stylus drag on the lower glyph. Looks like you, one apprentice says. You grin, but it isn't. Then comes the bigger lesson. The instructor lifts the fake and holds it up to the light. Still, he says, not bad. Because here's the thing, even the fakes serve a purpose. They teach, they echo, they carry fragments of style. And in a world where most people couldn't read, perception mattered more than perfection. You think about how many seals buried in the earth might be fakes, copies of copies, imitations made by merchants long forgotten, or children pretending to be scribes, or opportunists stamping whatever they could get away with. Historians still argue whether the high volume of similar seal motifs meant strict control or mass replication. Some say it shows centralised administration. Others think it reveals a flexible, open-ended system where anyone could enter the seal game with enough practice and nerve. Either way, you're now part of that lineage. At the end of the day, you carve a new seal, this one deliberately original, a fresh glyph combination, a subtle curve in the horn, a personal touch in the spacing. You stamp it cleanly. Then you carve a second one, identical. You compare the two. One will be yours. The other, you'll give to an apprentice to use, to practice, to pass off as their own. Because that's how it starts. And somehow, that's how it continues. Today, you're not carving. You're counting. That's right. Welcome to the mud-slick, number-smudged, slightly chaotic underbelly of Indus Valley bureaucracy, the record office. Or more accurately, a series of clay rooms filled with sealers, scribes, runners, sacks of grain, bundles of dyed cloth, and one wildly uncooperative chicken. You sit cross-legged at a low desk, handed a lump of clay the size of your fist. Your job is to create sealing tokens for incoming shipments. Each token must be stamped, marked, and logged in the soft clay tablet sitting nearby. This apparently is your rite of passage into what the older scribes affectionately call the bureaucratic mud. The first item, 3 jars of sesame oil from a merchant named Dev. He sets them down, pats his pouch and presents a clay seal, round, bearing a bull and 3 glyphs. You inspect it. The stamp is clean, maybe a little too enthusiastic on the pressure. One jar smells slightly rancid. You don't comment. You roll out a token, press the seal, mark 3, and pass it on. It's repetitive, it's dusty, and weirdly satisfying. Like ancient accounting with no numbers you can read and no calculators except your fingers and your ability to not drop things in the mud. The next trader brings copper tools in a reed basket. His seal shows a fish and 2 glyphs that look like angry eyes. You stamp his clay tag and send him off. Easy. Then comes a woman with a cart full of cloth bolts. Her seal? Missing. She shrugs. It broke. Someone groans. You're handed a blank token and a stylus. Write her trader code manually, says the clerk beside you. Use the workshop glyphs. You know them. You hesitate. This is the first time someone's trusting your carving in place of a real seal. You carefully inscribe 3 glyphs, a standing tree, a star, and the curl used for cloth merchants. The result? Not pretty, but legible. Stamp it later, the woman says, when I get a new one. You wonder how many temporary seals become permanent. Scholars have long debated whether the bureaucracy of the Indus Valley was centrally organised or just very, very efficient through habit. The sheer number of clay sealings found in ruins, thousands, suggests there were systems in place. But the systems? Well, they weren't written down in any language we can read, which is unfortunate, and also very on brand. You pause for lunch, a bowl of spicy stew with too many onion skins and not enough lentils. Someone passes around dried mango strips. The goat tries to eat yours. You let him have one. He sulks anyway. After the break, you're asked to help sort an old storage jar of sealings found buried in a side room. Most are crumbled or worn, but some impressions are still visible. You squint at one that shows an elephant with exaggerated tusks. That one's ceremonial, the scribe says. Marked for the big grain store near the east gate. Not used anymore. Another shows 3 glyphs and a weird squiggle. Misprint, someone mutters. Stamped twice. Still passed. You ask how they know all this. The older scribe shrugs. Pattern recognition. You sit with enough clay, the mistakes start talking louder than the perfect ones. That sticks with you. You spend the afternoon cataloguing the sealings, stacking them by motif, estimating origins, brushing dirt from the cracks with a chicken feather. It's not symbolic, just effective. You find one so worn it's barely readable, but a tiny glyph remains, the curl for river. You keep it aside. Later, a runner rushes in, breathless, arms full of clay tokens. Shipment from the north gate, he huffs. 2 missing seals. The room kicks into gear. A scribe calls out for backup tokens. Someone pulls out the official workshop seal, a square block with a tiger and 5 glyphs, and starts stamping replacements. You help, pressing clean impressions into still wet clay, wiping your stylus between uses, keeping the rhythm fast but clean. The work is relentless, but there's something hypnotic about it. Stamp, pass. Stamp, pass. A language of pressure and timing, line and loop. Even without understanding a single word, you're helping track ownership, goods and trust. One older scribe hands you a ceiling marked with an unfamiliar symbol, 2 vertical strokes and what looks like a snail. You frown. That's new, you say. New trader, he replies. No animal, all glyphs, minimalist. You nod, trying not to look too smug. Maybe the style you pioneered in the workshop is catching on. Before sunset, you help deliver the day's ceilings to the storage room. The space is cool, lined with shelves of clay tokens stored in woven trays. A few are tagged with wooden markers, primitive filing tabs. One shelf is labelled with a mark resembling the angry fish glyph. You drop your tray there. You pause before leaving and glance at a broken seal stuck into the wall near the doorway. Half a bull, 3 glyphs, and a crack right through its centre. Was that a mistake? You ask. Maybe, someone says behind you. Or maybe it's the seal of whoever used to run this room. You imagine someone long ago carving that seal and watching it crack in half, then shrugging and pressing it into the wall anyway. Not broken, just finished. Outside, the sun dips low. The paperwork, if you can call it that, is done. The clay is drying. The goat is asleep under the bench. You walk home slowly, fingers still curved like they're gripping invisible tokens, brain still echoing with stamp press pass. You may not know what every glyph means, or why that elephant had extra tusks, or how a missing seal can derail half a town's lentil inventory. But you know this much: the mud matters. And sometimes, that's enough. You wake with your hands sore and your brain doing that thing where it tries to carve imaginary seals into your breakfast bowl. The millet mush you're stirring looks dangerously like unfired clay. You take that as a sign you need to get out more. Good thing you're heading to the mound, not a mound. The mound. A raised cluster of baked brick and eroded dirt just outside the main settlement, where piles of broken seal fragments have been turning up in layers like onion skins. The chroniclers call it the seal graveyard, though technically it's more of an administrative midden. A team of workers, potters, diggers, and at least one guy who claims to have once found a whole jar of unicorn seals, meets you at the base of the rise. You follow them up the slope, dodging loose bricks and a sleeping dog that might be guarding something or just really into naps. At the top, the view opens up. The city's flat roofs stretch into the distance. The river glimmers lazily, and below your feet, centuries of junk, administrative junk. Broken tags, failed impressions, cracked seals, discarded glyph tablets, a bureaucratic compost heap. One of the workers hands you a chunk of clay with a partial seal. You squint. Half a buffalo, a triangle, and what could be a really sad-looking fish. From the 3rd layer, he says, deep stuff. This site might have been a warehouse or an archive or a dumping ground. No one's sure. Historians still argue whether the mound was a deliberate seal depository, some kind of bureaucratic exploration pile, or just the natural result of generations discarding the admin equivalent of sticky notes. You walk carefully, inspecting bits of fired and unfired clay, some still holding a ghost of the original impression. A few pieces show signs of being reused, glyphs scratched out and replaced. Others are snapped deliberately. You ask why someone would snap a seal on purpose. To retire it, says the dig leader, or hide it. Or maybe just bad luck. You hold up a fragment shaped like a triangle with dots. This one? Flawed, he says. The dots bled in firing. See the smear? You nod. It's subtle, but there. A smear in clay can turn blessed shipment into cursed bundle. Imagine the panic. You're handed a brush and told to help with clearing a shallow trench. The dirt is dry and gritty, laced with flecks of mica and crushed brick. You scrape slowly, gently, like you're brushing sleep from a story. And there it is, a whole seal. Round, slightly chipped but intact. The design, a seated figure between 2 trees. No animal, just a person, arms folded, head bowed, legs crossed, meditating, weeping, tired of bureaucracy. You show it to the dig leader. Rare, he mutters. Human figures don't show up much. It's true. Most Indus seals favour animals and glyphs. Human representations are scarce and almost always abstract. This one feels different. personal. Quirky tidbit. A handful of seals have been found with humanoid figures, usually in ritual poses. Some call them yogis. Others say they're deities or symbols of authority. No one agrees. No one knows. One even suggests they're just stylized merchants thinking very hard about lentils. You clean the seal gently with water and a soft cloth. The figure's face is blank, but its presence is undeniable. It doesn't roar like the tiger seals. It sits, like it's been waiting. You tag it for firing later, just a gentle hardening to preserve the lines. Then you mark its place in the trench with a tiny clay token. You want to remember exactly where this one sat. Elsewhere on the mound, someone unearths a pile of fragments with identical glyphs. Production batch, someone calls. Probably all tossed at once. You join them. You count 22 pieces, all showing the same looped triangle glyph, though each is slightly different in size and spacing. You realise they were likely carved by the same hand in quick succession. Maybe a rush order, maybe a temple tag. Then it hits you. Your reading habits in the clay. The fast lines. The inconsistent depth. A pattern of panic. Maybe the chronicler was late. Maybe their stylus broke halfway through. Maybe they carved all 22 seals while yelling at a goat. You've done that. You help pack up the finds in reed trays. Each piece is marked with a location glyph. The trays are tied with twine, sealed with a fresh stamp, yours, a fish with a curling tail and a bird glyph beside it. It's become your mark. You don't even remember inventing it. It just happened, somewhere between stamping lentils and losing styluses in the dark. You head back down the mound at sunset, clay under your fingernails, the scent of old earth in your hair. The workshop comes into view like an old friend, glowing gently in the dusk, its fires dim but alive. You drop off your finds, hand the full tray to the archivist and sneak one last look at the seated figure seal. It's drying on the edge of a table, quietly perfect. It may not tell a story you understand, but it tells you that someone, once, tried to say something. And that's enough for today. You're perched in the back of a swaying cart this morning, hands gripping the edge, your pouch of tools bouncing against your hip like it's trying to escape. You've been asked, no, voluntold, to accompany a trader on his outbound journey. Destination, a village 2 days downriver. Goal, observe how seals are used in transit. Hidden goal, survive the bumpy ride and whatever this goat sitting beside you is plotting. The cart's loaded with dried fruits, cloth bundles and 2 suspiciously loud amphorae. You suspect one's filled with fermented something. The trader, Naylan, pats them like they're children. Best dates this side of the delta, he says. You nod politely. You're still recovering from the fermented milk incident. At the next riverbank stop, you get your first glimpse of seals in motion. Literally. Bundles are being unpacked and retied. Each one has a clay tag, sometimes multiple. One from the sender, one from the transporter, and occasionally one from the previous transporter, just in case. It's like seal layering. The Bronze Age equivalent of packing slips, QR codes, and reputation management all rolled into thumb-sized impressions. One sack bears your own carving, the fish and bird glyph. You press your thumb beside it. Still intact, still sharp. That means the sack's unopened since leaving your workshop. In a world with no signature verification, that's as good as swearing on your goat. Naylan notices. Yours? He asks. You nod. It made it. Good, he says. Means they'll pay on time. The seals aren't decorative here. They're functional. One glance tells a buyer the bag hasn't been tampered with. 2 impressions confirm who packed it, who carried it, and, maybe most importantly, who to blame if the goods inside are mouldy. You watch a group of traders open packages only after carefully breaking the tags. The broken pieces are stored in a side pouch, not tossed. Proof, someone mutters, for the return trip. He helps stamp a few new clay tags for the bundles going forward. One of the local scribes lets you use his seal. It's a sleek circular one with a unicorn and glyphs arranged in a tight ring. You press carefully, evenly, no wobble. The imprint is crisp, balanced, ceremonial even. You hand it back. You carved this, he shakes his head. Inherited. And that's another wrinkle in the world of seals. They aren't always one-person tools. Some are passed down. Some represent entire merchant houses, temples, or districts. You've started to recognize them, like familiar logos. The 3-fish seal for river traders, the upright bull for the pottery guild, a looped glyph used by spice sellers so often it's become almost flavor-coded. You ride out again in the late afternoon, your head bobbing with the rhythm of oxen hooves. The sun is low, casting long shadows and making the clay tags glow like tiny suns tied to the sides of every bundle. At a water stop, you meet another caravan coming in the opposite direction. Goods headed to your city. Their seals? Different animal motifs, slightly bulkier tags, a different glyph language entirely. Still Indus script, but the regional dialects of clay are unmistakable. One of the traders points to your pouch. Seal maker. You nod. He hands you one of his seals. It's massive, round, the size of a palm, showing two bulls locked in a mirrored pose. The glyphs curve around the border like a protective mantra. You press it into soft clay for practice. The result is gorgeous. You feel like you've just stamped a myth. Later that night, the caravan sets up camp, fires are lit, chickpeas are roasted. Everyone smells like smoke and tired rope. You sit beside Nalan and help repack one of the jars. Its wax seal broke in transit. You restamp a new clay cap, pressing a local seal into the warm surface. You get it just right on the first try. He watches silently. You're careful, he says. Better than being wrong in front of a granary clerk, you reply. He chuckles. Or a priest with a short temper. And that's another layer of seal culture. Not just trade and bureaucracy, but diplomacy. A good seal doesn't just protect goods. It protects reputations. It speaks when you're not there. It is you. You stare into the fire. Around you, dozens of stamped bundles glow faintly in the firelight, each one holding stories, food, fabric, and trust. The seals say, "This is from me, this is mine, this is true." And out here, on the road, in the dark, it means everything. As you drift off beside a wrapped bolt of dyed linen, your stylus tucked under your head, and the goat suspiciously trying to chew your sandal, you think, they're just tiny carvings, but they carry whole cities. The goat wakes you up by sneezing on your foot. It's not exactly the majestic sunrise you'd hoped for, but then again, nothing in the Indus Valley administration system screams romantic getaway. You sit up, brush hay out of your hair, and notice the caravans already stirring, merchants rolling up bedding, clay tags jangling gently on reed bundles, someone loudly arguing about the fairness of last night's dried fig trade. Today's leg of the journey takes you to a riverside town where seals aren't just used, they're practically revered. You arrive at midday, dusty and sun-dazed, and are promptly led to what the locals call the stone house. Not because it's made of stone, though it is, but because it's where the stones live, meaning the seals. You blink. You mean, they store them? The clerk at the door chuckles. No, friend, they remember them. Inside, a low, wide room lined with shelves holds hundreds, maybe thousands, of seal impressions pressed into long slabs of clay. Not actual seals, but impressions. Like a master library of all the authorized marks used in this region. A hall of echoes. This one, says the clerk, pointing to a row, was from a trader who dealt in shell bangles. He runs his fingers over a spiraled glyph beside a stylized fish. We haven't seen him in years. Each impression is labelled with a local mark. Nothing you can read, but enough to hint at a system. A seal's owner, date of use, maybe even a category. You stare, awed. It's like an ancient registry of trust. You press your finger into a blank patch of clay at the edge and feel the texture. Smooth, cooled by centuries of silence. Then you glance up. There it is. Your own seal, the fish and bird glyph, carefully pressed, slightly crooked, slightly, right next to a unicorn and tree combo from a different caravaner. Someone filed me, you whisper. The clerk grins. Means they trust you. You sit with that feeling for a minute. Because here's the thing. Historians still argue whether the Indus script was a phonetic language, a purely symbolic system, or something in between. But here, it's not about deciphering. It's about recognition. These impressions aren't read. They're known. And being known, that's everything. Outside, a dispute breaks out between two traders over a broken tag. You and the clerk step out to mediate. The bundle is sealed with a glyph you've never seen, 2 overlapping loops and a slash, but the tag is cracked. The impression is incomplete. One trader insists the goods came untampered. The other accuses them of swapping contents mid-journey. A small crowd gathers. This could get messy, but the clerk has an idea. He checks the stone house, finds the master impression of the seal, compares it with the cracked tag. It's a match, he says. The impression is just shallow. Dispute resolved. The goods are delivered. Nobody gets yelled at. The goat continues chewing something it definitely shouldn't be chewing. As the afternoon fades, you join the local seal makers. Their styles are familiar, but they use different tools, some tipped with shell, others with hammered bone. One even uses a long reed, hollowed and sharpened for the fine dots and glyphs. You show your seal, they recognize it immediately. "Ah, from the west route," one says. "You carve deep." You blush. "I was nervous." They show you new glyph combinations. One, a beautiful loop chain. Another, 3 dashes arranged like riverbanks. One resembles a dancing flame. You try to mimic them, carefully carving onto a blank token. The style is regional, elegant, flowing. You're used to blockier strokes. You adapt. There's laughter, a clay smudge fight. One apprentice smears a glyph like frosting. "Modern art!" he shouts. You flick a glob of soft clay back. The goat, perhaps in protest, sneezes again. As the sun begins to dip, the seal master calls the group together and speaks slowly. A seal speaks when you're not present. It carries your intent, your truth, your memory. Carve care into it. Carve clarity. You look down at your newest seal. It's not perfect, but it feels right. A spiral glyph with a curved bird motif. A quiet echo of every carving you've done, every lesson you've absorbed, every dusty journey and cracked clay tag. You fire it gently before dinner, placing it in the embers beside the others. You'll polish it tomorrow. Maybe use it. Maybe give it away. Later that night, you sleep near the river, listening to frogs, the soft creak of moored boats, and the rhythmic clink of seals bumping gently against one another in tied bundles. You dream of symbols glowing in the dark. Not words, not sounds, just presence. You don't know the language, but you're learning how to listen. You wake up beside the river, the early mist curling over the water like a lazy whisper. The boats are still, the air thick with dew and the scent of wet reeds. Somewhere behind you, a trader yawns loud enough to startle the goats. And today you're burying history. No, really. You're joining a small team headed to deposit old seals, damaged ones, retired ones, sometimes even unused blanks, into a hidden cache beneath the southern storeroom floor. It's an odd little tradition in this region. When seals are no longer in use, they're not tossed. They're tucked away, carefully, like tools, or relics, or secrets. You ask why. The scribe leading the walk shrugs. Some say it's respect, some say it's for luck, others think it's just tidier. You walk through the clay-paved alleys, passing carts creaking under their loads and children scraping lines in the dust with sticks. The storeroom isn't far, just a squat building with thick walls, a cool interior, and a slightly judgmental lizard living in the rafters. Inside, someone's already lifted a floor panel. Beneath it lies a shallow pit lined with smooth bricks. It's maybe the size of a sleeping mat and half full of clay. No bones, no ashes, just seals, hundreds of them. You kneel and look closer. Some are snapped in half, others whole. A few are so worn you can barely make out the carvings, but they're there. Tigers, fish, birds, curled glyphs, block seals, round pendants, fragments of other people's hands. You're told to add yours. You hesitate. The seal in your hand is old, one of your first, a buffalo with uncertain legs and a glyph combination you no longer use. It's been with you for weeks, pressed onto bundles, passed through markets, nicknamed the Moo Ambassador. You almost want to keep it, but then again, this is how things last, not by being held, but by being left. You place it gently in the pit, it rests between a broken unicorn and a seal with what might be a dancing rhinoceros. A good crowd. Others do the same, offering up their cracked or retired seals, pressing them into the earth like puzzle pieces into memory. Quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists have found entire jars of seals buried beneath buildings in Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. Whether these were for safekeeping, ritual deposits, or simply out-of-use storage, no one knows. Some suggest it was symbolic, retiring a tool after its story ended. Others think it was a way to start fresh, to close a bureaucratic chapter. You help sprinkle a layer of fine sand over the cache. No chant, no ceremony, just a quiet moment and the sound of earth settling. Then the bricks are replaced, the floor panel lowered. The room is whole again, but underneath Your seal sleeps. You head outside into the morning bustle. The city is alive, markets yawning open, scribes unrolling tablets, goats declaring themselves once more. You stop by the workshop to clean your stylus and grab a fresh blank. It's time to carve something new. But before that, you're invited to help seal up a shipment bound for a distant town. Not just any town, one you've never been to and probably never will. It's far upriver, past the turn where the water splits and the trade slows. You're handed the final tag, one impression space left. You press your newest seal into it, the fish and bird again, but this time with a new glyph beneath, a loop you invented just last night. It's not official, not yet, but it's yours. You hand it off, the tag still warm. Will it get there, you ask? The merchant shrugs. If the river behaves, if the oxen behave, if the boat doesn't flip, you know, the usual. You watch the bundle disappear into the back of a cart. It'll travel for days, maybe weeks, maybe it gets wet, maybe it gets lost, or maybe years from now someone finds that tag, reads the seal, doesn't know your name, doesn't know your goat. But they'll see the fish, the bird, and the little loop, and they'll know someone was here. Later you sit on the storeroom steps, your fingers dusted with clay and your brain full of half-finished glyphs. You wonder how many other seals have been buried, forgotten, passed over, broken by time. You wonder how many were meant to be forgotten. You wonder how many, like yours, are just sleeping. The sun's barely cleared the rooftops when you arrive at the edge of the dig site, this time not as a chronicler but as something else entirely. An archaeologist, sort of. You're still you, same dusty tunic, same stylus mark on your knuckle, but today you're helping a visiting team catalogue old seal fragments recovered from a collapsed building in the northern quarter. It's been buried under layers of windblown silt, animal droppings, and the sort of architectural mistakes no one wants to admit happened. You're given a brush, a cloth, and a clay tablet. Be careful, someone says, this one's interesting. The seal fragment in your hand is cool, smooth, clearly old. One corner of a rectangular seal snapped diagonally. You rotate it gently. There's a single glyph, part of a fish shape maybe, or a stylized flag. Beside it, what might be a tail or a human leg or a very confident comma. You stare at it for a long time. It doesn't look familiar. And yet, it does. Like something you've carved before but forgotten. Or maybe someone copying your copying of someone else's seal generations removed. You place it in the sun and brush the dust away from the edges. The fine lines, the careful groove. Whoever made this wasn't guessing. They had a system, a hand steady with purpose. You turn to the dig supervisor. Where was this one found? He shrugs. Buried beneath a platform, could have been storage, or housing, or both. Historians still argue whether these buildings were homes, warehouses, or hybrid live workspaces. Some suggest the same room served multiple functions: sleeping, storing, stamping, living. In the Indus Valley, boundaries weren't always marked by doors. You're led to a grid of recovered ceilings laid out on a long cloth, each one a fragment, none complete. One has a tiger mid-pounce, another has two glyphs and a broken symbol that looks like a cross between a cartwheel and a sad octopus. You hold one up. The style is blocky, sharp cuts, probably an earlier piece. Then you see something strange, a seal with no symbols at all, just spirals. Beautiful symmetrical spirals etched across the entire face, like someone decided to decorate a cookie with mathematics. What does it mean, you ask? No one answers. One archaeologist leans over and says, could be decorative or private, or maybe someone just got tired of all the fish. You laugh, but quietly, because there's something a little haunting about it. How all these carvings, so purposeful once, now sit in rows like forgotten words in a lost language. Glyphs with no guide, messages with no recipients. The city around them long gone, yet the seals endure. Quirky fact, some of the most intact Indus seals were found not in houses or temples, but in drains. Some were washed out, some dropped. Others may be deliberately hidden. We may never know whether they were lost, discarded, or tucked away by hands that feared or loved them too much to use. Later, you're asked to help stamp some of the recovered seals into fresh clay tablets. For comparison, they say, you press carefully. The impressions come out clear. Symbols you've never used. Animals carved by long-dead hands. And yet, the technique feels familiar. You find yourself analysing the carving depth, the angle of the stylus, the way the horn on a particular bull arcs just slightly upward, as if daring the stamp to fail. You recognise the fingerprint of a fellow chronicler, not in name, but in method. The past talking to you not in words, but in pressure and polish. You take a moment and walk the site, past the outlines of collapsed rooms and cracked brick platforms. You imagine the city, whole again, smoke curling from kiln vents, children chasing goats through alleys, traders arguing over barley prices, and in a quiet corner, someone like you, pressing a fresh seal into wet clay, wiping sweat from their brow, wondering if anyone would ever care. They probably didn't think they'd be remembered. They probably weren't trying to be. But here you are, brushing their work from the soil. You sit beside the cloth grid again and hold a final piece, a triangle glyph, clean and sharp, etched deep into fired stone. It's not special, it's not rare, but it's complete. And for a second, you forget what century you're in, because this is the same triangle you carved last week, the same loop you copied from a mentor, the same symbol you stamped onto a trade bundle bound for who knows where, and maybe, just maybe, it's the one that came back. The kiln fires are low tonight, crackling quietly like they're whispering secrets to the clay. You sit just outside the workshop, legs stretched, stylus tucked behind one ear, and your hands coated in that now familiar mixture of dust, ash, and the faintest sheen of oil from polishing. You've done it. Your last seal of the season is drying nearby, faint steam rising from it in the evening breeze. It's a fish with two glyphs underneath, one old, one invented, a quiet signature you now recognise as your own. You've gone from botched buffalo legs to balanced glyph blocks, from copying known motifs to crafting seals that might someday confuse an archaeologist half a world and half a lifetime away. But tonight, you're not carving, you're remembering. The goat snores softly behind you. Yes, the same goat. He's practically a scribe now, and you're watching shadows ripple across the wall as the firelight flickers, throwing giant seal shapes into the night. Lions and tigers, spirals and birds, bulls with impossible horns, glyphs looping like thoughts half remembered. It's been weeks, maybe months. The workshop has become a rhythm, and you're a quiet heartbeat in it. You helped craft trade, you helped write, without ever reading. You copied symbols you couldn't name and still gave them meaning. Because that's what it's like to live in this time. You don't always know what things mean, but you learn to trust the process. You smooth the stone, you press the seal, you let it speak. And now you sleep. Let yourself settle now, deeper into whatever softness you're nestled in. You've travelled far, but not with your feet. With your fingers, your eyes, your patience. You carved in dust and ash. You learned a language without words. You pressed symbols into time, knowing they might never be read, but trusting they'd be felt. Picture it. The faint warmth of fired stone still resting on your fingertips. The distant lull of river water brushing the banks beyond the granaries. A breeze curling through narrow alleys where traders murmur and seals clink gently from reed bundles slung across strong shoulders. And above it all, the night. Vast, quiet, soft with stars. Maybe your last seal still sits in someone's pouch travelling across the continent. Maybe it's already buried beneath the next layer of history, or maybe it's right there, beside you, still warm. And if not the seal, then the memory of making it. You've touched a piece of something older than empires. You've whispered to stone, and even if the words are lost, the care, the lines, the rhythm, they remain. So, as your thoughts drift further now, let them circle like gentle glyphs across the dark. No pressure, no urgency. Just the comfort of knowing your hands made something that mattered. Sleep well, seal carver, and dream in symbols, 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 dream in symbols. you.